Welcome to my live. I debated going live right now because I only have 50 minutes before I have to go. But I haven't been on live in a while, and there's two really good papers I want to talk about. Oh wow, that's weird. My screen goes through the other app or my mouse. Okay, cool. I am live. All right, everything sounds good. So, cool, there's my chat and stuff. So, yeah, I found this new article by John D. Speth. It's called Mid to Northern Latitude Hunting Economies, Unpredictable Returns, Nutritional Constraints, Meat Caching, and Archaeological Conundrums. And I've known about John D. Speth for a while. He's a great anthropologist. And this came out, let's see, 2025, I think in March. But I missed it and only read it recently. So let's read the abstract. Mid to northern latitude hunting peoples could not consume more than 300 grams of protein per day, or roughly 1,200 kilocalories. Exceeding that limit could lead within a week or two to a debilitating, even lethal condition known as rapid starvation. The remaining energy deficit had to be filled using non-protein sources, mostly animal fat. To minimize the risk of rapid starvation, hunting peoples typically consume diets in which protein remained well below 300 grams and fat contributed 2/3 to 3/4 of total calories. While ungulate muscle has almost no intramuscular fat, and extramuscular fat is limited and often depleted seasonally. Thus, whenever possible, humans or hunters targeted the fattest animals, took primarily the fattiest body parts, discarded much of the lean muscle, especially thighs and shoulders, and often killed multiple animals each day just to get enough fat. North American communal bison drives, despite their obvious success at killing dozens to hundreds of animals, were often nutritional failures, with many, at most times, most of the carcasses simply left to rot, largely or entirely untouched. If the day's yield of meat and especially fat exceeded needs, foragers store the surplus by feasting and putting on body fat, stashing reserves in or near camp, transporting surpluses from camp to camp as mobile stores, and creating off-site caches which were often not utilized until months after they were created. The paper concludes by exploring a wide range of counterintuitive archaeological implications drawn from these observations. Cool. So a lot of anthropology is very focused on protein, 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 and they basically forget that fat even exists in animals. A lot of times they look at very lean deer and they just think like, okay, wild animal fat is very lean, and you can't even like acknowledge that fat exists. So a lot of it comes down to carbohydrates in plants and then protein in animals, and that's like it's thought of as like the hunter-gatherer diet. But okay, so an important caveat is that it's mid to northern latitude. So these are like northernly people that don't have access to plants, especially in the wintertime. So there they'd have to be basically dependent on hunting. They have this 30% protein limit or 300 grams. Really, it's like 30 to 35% protein per day of your total calories can be protein. Um, But here, I mean, it's basically saying mostly animal fat has to be the best. So 75% protein or calories as fat. Um, and so this is a really long article. I read most of it maybe a week ago. Um, I thought I could go through and I was going to eventually like add all these quotes to my database because it's kind of shocking how much I don't have. This is like really excellent work. That a lot of these have escaped my attention, and I thought I was like pretty much an expert on a lot of these. So for a host of reasons, hunting returns, even in pre contact times, were probably almost always unpredictable. So a lot of these stories are of Europeans moving out to live with natives, which they would call savages. Um, Certainly a somewhat racist stereotype, but here they're saying they kill a lot of elk and eels, and they're really only eating meat, but they're hungry like all the time. Smoked eels, porcupines, a few beavers. They eat fresh moose meat, they dry it to live on the rest of their time until September, and they suffer greatly if they can't get some of these animals during the year. Yeah, so my scrolling is seemingly a little laggy here, but I'm gonna go through it. I was checking out my memory usage, and Zotero is using 1.4 gigabytes of memory, which is the app here. And it might be because my database has 15,000 articles, but I'm not really sure. All right, so if I was to add these, oh, that is slow. Oof. All right, let's do that. Gonna add one as a particular note for each one. Um, all right. Eskimos could get no game, and we suffered hunger. My tent being much damaged with the country, I was obliged to take it down and sleep with Peter in his tent. We could get nothing warm to eat. I've scarce ever been so cold in winter. Their food is whatever they can get from the chase and from fishing, for they do not till the soil at all. In the month of February until the middle of March is the great hunt for beavers, otters, moose, bears, and for the caribou. If the weather then is favorable, they live in great abundance and are as haughty as princes and kings, but if it is against them, they are greatly to be pitied and often die of starvation. 1897. And what is this? So, Indigenous hunters in Acadia of Nova Scotia, so Canada. All right, so we're still talking about winter and security part of the South. Um, these are all the methods of procuring food with which the Indians were acquainted. They afforded them but a scanty and carry a support. When the game was plenty and the hunter successful, they had an abundance of food. When the season of the year was unfavorable and their success but small, they were reduced to scarcity and want. Their sufferings this way were sometimes extremely severe, and there was no year in which they were not subject to these extremes of great plenty and severe famine. After being for some time pressed with hunger, Jacques Marquette. Oh, yeah, this is a cool quote. How much buffalo existed? 15 miles on both sides, 1,350 square miles of country. Can you imagine? 50 million bison. So, based on ample evidence from ethnohistory, ethnography, archaeology, and oral histories, we know that indigenous peoples did, in fact, rely heavily upon the bison, killing them in prodigious numbers, most famously by driving whole herds into pounds, log or brush corrals, dead end arroyos, rivers, snowdrifts, sand dunes, onto thin ice, and over cliffs. Accounts from the latter half of the 17th century even describe surrounding small herds on foot, sometimes aided by fire. Okay. Yeah, head smashed in by this brink guy. This is a great book. All right, awesome sources here. Go away, useful plugin. Um, so, food security for the plains bison hunter is seldom mentioned as a serious concern prior to the latter half of the 19th century when bison were systematically exterminated. Okay, so they really weren't as productive and secure. They could still readily go hungry, even starve in the midst of plenty. And really, the focus on bison here is largely a matter of convenience. Yeah, because the history about it is so good compared to many other animals that were overhunted. So, was shopping for bison, was it really pretty easy? You just pull up to a bison herd and kill some bison? All right, so bison don't show up to the place you want them to. Realize how big the land is out there. Though we kill abundance of animals to maintain the people, yet the buffaloes are not so numerous as usual in these parts. We are therefore of opinion that some tribe of Indians hover about us and frighten away the animals to some other place less frequented by man. Formerly, buffalo used to be very numerous. Now it's gone. And then here's about a pound where they drive bison into it and then kill them in like an enclosure. So all the ways they can get out of the enclosures that they used to build. So basically just saying like, yeah, you can drive, or it's just not that easy to capture these large animals. All right, so why would they let so much good meat go to waste? All that high quality protein, yet still try to kill more bison? This is like the main question in the paper. And we always hear that, people would eat all parts of the animal, but that's really not true. Okay, and nutritional background. Yeah, so they're all about protein content in the meat. There's no mention whatsoever of lipids. Hunting, meat eating, and animal protein figure very prominently in studies of human origins and evolution, a focus that interestingly mirrors the valuation of meat and protein in contemporary Western culture more broadly. Okay, going back to Darwin, we got all these. Here we got Mary Steiner, The Hunting Apes. I think I have that book. Yeah, yeah. Craig Stanford. Okay, cool. Um, is this Man the Hunter? We- Yeah, Man the Hunter. Also have that book. Cool. Okay. Yeah, so we have a Yellow and Wheeler's expensive tissue hypothesis, where our brain is vastly enlarged compared to those of other primates. And they posited that a costly organ like the gut underwent reduction in order to preserve the metabolic status quo. They think the human gut was reduced. So they hypothesized that the hominin diet must have incorporated a greater proportion of high quality foods, despite the gut's reduced size. So most scholars see meat as the best candidate. Um, so people have challenged it, saying cooking was actually the important thing, or fermentation. Okay, and here we have another thing from Lewis Binford, his utility indices. Uh, so his modified general utility index focused on the femur, or the mass of muscle tissue associated with it, ungulate's upper hind legs. Okay, so he was basically saying protein was more important than fat, even though he knew how much these Eskimo and Nunamia, or in terms of liking fat. Yeah. In short, for mid to northern latitude hunting people's sustenance were heavily dependent on animal foods. Acquiring meat, that is muscle tissue, is decidedly not the first order of business. No doubt meat was important, but its importance paled by comparison to that of fat.